Anyway, let's talk cycling. I appreciate your feedback. What happened last Saturday? Since last Saturday, I have not been on the bike. Yeah, I appreciate it, Dwayne. I've got that taken care of. I have not been on the bike since last Saturday because you guys know I train all the time. And so usually I go 6 weeks, then I take a week off. And during the off week, when you're resting, you're not supposed to be completely off the bike for the entire period because it kind of shuts down your system and you kind of have to build it back up. So what I did was I went and reviewed everything I'd been doing. And with this heat, the heat came into our area like the first week of June. It just went from nice at the end of May to hot. And right now, those of you who are in Portland and Seattle area, you're getting hit now this weekend. They're supposed to get triple digits. And a lot of people out there don't have air conditioning, So it's kind of like it's going to be a problem for them because we have AC here because of our humidity. So everybody puts AC in their homes. Well, out there in the morning, it might be like 65 or 50 something because of the Pacific. And then in the day, even when it warms up to 90, it doesn't feel as bad. But this weekend is going to be unusual for them. So because of the heat, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to really acclimate to the heat. And that means you got to be out in it. And so sitting out here and working in the office or you're working indoors, whatever it is you're doing, then you go outside for a 2-hour ride. It takes longer to acclimate because you're not out in it for many, many hours. So you got to really go easy, KJL, how you doing? So the key is that I decided to give my body the chance to rest. Now, when you're resting, you can't eat like you eat when you're training. In other words, I'm not saying starve yourself, but you can't be carbo loading if you're not out on the bike as much. So during the rest week, usually I cut my volume down to about half, and I also drop the intensity. But this week I decided to just go ahead and just not ride for like 4 days in a row, just to let my body really recover. And I actually ended up losing 1 kilo this week doing nothing. I didn't stop eating. I just rested. I drank a lot of water, as I usually do. But what ends up happening is because I am not training as extensively, I did not carbo load. I did not do the electrolytes or whatever else. Just normal juices or whatever you eat with your meal. And so my body really feels good and strong. So tomorrow when I get on the bike, I'm just going to go and do like a little see how I feel kind of ride. I'm not sure if Paul will be back yet. Paul's been recuperating because he had like a health issue, and so he had to take a break. He had dental surgery, so he took a break from it. And so he's been recovering. And I told him, until you're 100%, I said, don't disregard the fact that it's just dental work because your body still needs that energy to heal. And then this heat hit. And so when he went out to train one time by himself, he said he wasn't feeling great. He was feeling dizzy or whatever because he's indoors all the time. He's indoors in the morning. So by the time it gets time for him to get out, it's in the afternoon to in the evening. So he's getting out in the heat from just being out. He said he was feeling dizzy or whatever. So I told him, I said, wait until you're 100%. Then you can get back into your program. And usually you want to give yourself at least a full week of training before you start ramping things up, because that full week will let you know how you feel. So I decided to just take a big rest week here and take a break from everything I've been doing on the bike, but continue with everything else. I spent time with the family, hung out with my girls, they're out of school. And so it's kind of like, just get back into it. It's all like you're recharging your batteries, because it's easy to question your training when you don't perform very well. But it's important, if you know why you didn't perform that well, to not doubt. I knew the heat was bugging me, because that's why I made that video, and I released it to show that, hey, look at the heart rate I do all the time, and this is how bad it is feeling. That's how you know. That's what's nice about those tools, because you've got some kind of measurement to coincide with how you feel. That's why I always say feeling is the number one thing. And so it was clear to me that I just need more time to get used to the heat. And usually within a week or so, you kind of start feeling better. And so I'm expecting by maybe July 4th or so, I should be fine, ready to just go on, get back to what I was doing before. But that's very important that you listen to yourself. And so if you had a big event planned and you're leading up to it and you're not feeling great, you can still try to do it, but when you get there, see how you feel still. Let's say if you've already signed up for an event. Because around our area, we have a ride coming up called Burn Your Buns on July 4th, which is a Sunday. I haven't signed up for it, but the guys that we ride with have been talking about it, the team our guys. And some people may go and do it. Nobody knows at this point. Nobody has committed. I don't like to commit too early to rides around here because the weather is an impact, and sometimes they'll shut off the ride, and you've already committed. You don't really get rain checks or anything. They consider it a donation to charity, so no big deal, but still, I like to be able to do the event I signed up for. So it's good to see all of you out here, but I'm fine. I'm just like myself. I just had to get used to the heat. So I've been out messing around with the plants in the yard when I get a little bit of free time just to be outside in this heat. It just seems hotter than it ever has been around here. I've been in Houston for a very long time, since 1983, and I just don't even remember it being this challenging getting acclimated to the heat. This is even hotter than where I grew up in West Africa. I grew up on the coast in Monrovia, in Western Africa. It doesn't get this hot. So I don't know. Maybe global warming is an issue. Remember we froze up in Texas, like 100-year freeze or something like that. So we have these events, and now the guys in the Northwest are going to get hit this weekend. That's a lot of stuff going on. So it's kind of it's something to be aware of. Our environment is changing, so we have to adapt. But when I did ride, I took my aluminum bottles that really keep water icy cold pretty much for like 90 hours, they claim. But for the whole ride, if you put ice in those bottles, I showed you guys the last time I was here, the clean canteen bottles, they really work really well. And you're not giving up maybe what, 4 or 5 ounces, if that, as far as weight. So it's not that big a deal. But especially if I'm training alone, I take those, and they work really well because it's nice having very cold water 2 hours into a ride. So I will see if I hear from Paul. If I hear from Paul, we may ride tomorrow, or we may do something on Sunday. It's the weekend. You got to get out, and even on a rest weekend, loosen up. So that's good. All right. So Will says he just switched from flat bars to drops. What sort of performance increase should I expect? I don't see, the flat bars offer you different position, and so the drop bars actually give you more positions, but you're not going to notice anything noticeable. Depending on, how do you measure that per se? Because the flat bars are mostly on mountain bikes and I guess city bikes or whatever. So it's kind of like, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just pay attention to how you set up those bars and make sure you can use all the positions on the bars. We'll come back to fit again. If you're using all the positions, you will be more efficient because you have more positions. You can get lower. So yes, you will be more aerodynamic. Definitely. So now let's see here. Dwayne says your muscle memory will kick in. That's a great thing about cycling. Yeah, you don't forget just because you take off some time. It takes a long time. And even that, when you do, that's why they say it's just like riding a bike when they use these analogies to remembering things. You never really forget how to ride a bike. But what happens is when you're a highly tuned, highly trained cyclist, when you stop training, depending on the length of time, the body does lose fitness. That's just the way the body works. The body's a machine. If you don't use your car and it sits in a garage, it's not good for your car. You've got to use it. It's the same thing with the body. So yeah, you lose some fitness, but not a whole lot in a short period of time, especially with the kind of training we do. We ride hours on end. Now, this time of year with the heat as it is, we're not doing the 6-7 hour rides that we do in the winter. So for now, we're going to cut things back and focus more on intensity. We'll go shorter and go faster. So we might do 3 to 4 hour rides, covering more ground. So a lot of times, even when I ride solo, I try to cover 100 kilometers, which is about 62 miles, in 3.5, 4 hours. That's my gauge, depending on the conditions, of course. But that keeps me in zone 2 when I ride solo. So my zone 2 is about, 26 kilometer average thereabout, 16, 17 miles an hour. Because where I ride, I'm going up and down. It's not flat, But it's more, I focus more on the time. I'm going to do 3.5, 4 hours, and I'm going to stay at this effort range for that period of time. So whatever I cover, I cover. I don't worry about the ground I cover. I focus more on the effort and the time. That's more important, And so the fitness is there because more than the last year, we've been riding consistently 5-6 hour rides every Saturday, plus the other training. So it's there. What you put in the bank is there. That's what Dwayne's referring to, muscle memory, in a way. What you put in will be there. So you take off a week, or if you have to travel or go on vacation for a week, don't worry about it. And so what I wanted to talk about today was usually you want to plan your rest weeks to coincide with either times when you have more work to do at work in your profession, or you have time where you need to spend more time with your family or significant others, or you're going on vacation. Plan your vacation during your rest week. So then you ramp up to that week and then go ahead and enjoy the week off and not worry about it. When you get back, you build back up into it. The first few rides, just go out, see how you feel before you really get back into your full-blown program. That's why it's important to have a program that you use. So Alpine Ibex, are you on disc brakes? I don't own any bikes with disc brakes. The 3 bikes I own have rim brakes. I personally would not buy a bike specifically because it has disc brakes, because I don't see that as a need. I have no problem stopping my bicycle. I have problems making it go very fast. That's why I train. So, yes. Now, if you're somebody who has carbon rims and you ride in the rain, the braking performance in that situation is less than if you have aluminum rims. Even with the aluminum rims, when they're wet, you still have to use your brake a certain way. You scrub off the water, and then you can brake normally, per se. But when it's wet, it's wet. You're not going to brake as quickly, even with disc brakes. So don't fall for that. It's a marketing ploy, that I call it. They're intentionally pushing disc brakes. There's no need out there that they were trying to solve. How many of us are coming down alpine passes that need the so-called braking performance of discs? And the guys who rode rim brakes, somehow they managed to descend mountains. Eddie Merckx used to ride rim brakes up and down those mountains in the Tour de France. They didn't have trouble stopping. So it's not a need. But all the bikes are being pushed. If you go to the bike shop, that's all they have. For me, my challenge is I can't buy these bikes off the shelf because their top tubes are either too short in my size or their seat tubes are too aggressive. 73.5, 74 degrees in a 56. I can't get my saddle to go back far enough on those bikes. That's why 2 of my bikes are custom bikes. The custom bikes don't cost any more than the bikes they're pushing on the shelves. And with custom bikes, you can tell the builder whether you want to go with disc brakes, regular rim brakes, or direct mount rim brakes. And the direct mount have even more braking power because they're attached to the actual stays on the frame. They apply the force differently. So depending on your choice, I just like the ease of maintenance on the standard rim brakes. I'm always fiddling with bikes that have disc brakes for other people that bring them around. They need a lot of care. And depending on the size of the disc you get, some of them can warp on you, some of them bend, and you get a lot of rubbing. So they do need to be maintained. Not all of them are like that, but you're going to have to spend some money to get the good quality ones that don't bend easily or warp on you, And then the disc has to be trued as well as the wheel, You don't just check the wheel, you check both. They do need more care, but they work well. But that's not my number one reason for buying a bike. I want a bike that fits me, that performs really well, and has great road geometry. That's what I look for. As far as how it stops, that's secondary to me. Because I don't use brakes. I talk about it all the time when I do the group rides. I use the wind to slow me down. I coast or whatever. That's what you do in the group. Nobody wants you braking in the group. unless something happens. Because then you get that big yo-yo effect. You won't be very popular if you're breaking in the group unnecessarily. Somebody will say something because you're making them react to you all the time. So don't fall for that. So Mark said he's got a white Sussex with discs. Let's see what kind of bike. Let's see here. I took a little bit of filming when we're in the parking lot of some of the guys' bikes. There's a guy that has a lightweight bike. I think that was called Altergast or something. It's a German name. It's pretty light. It's Jesus. And then there was a Cipollini bike. A lot of the bikes they have, all of them had discs on them. And then Fabian had the new Pinarello. I think he might have the F12 or whatever the latest one was. And it had discs. His other one was rim, but he chose to get discs because Pinarello makes them with both. And I think that's the way it should be. I'd like the option of choosing what brakes I want on my bike because I like to set it and forget it. I don't want to be messing with brakes. I want to just ride. Let me see if I can find your bike on here that you're talking about. Let's go to this screen here. Let's see. Sharing. I want to share this screen here with you guys. Let's see. Del Monastery. All right. Let's see here. A white Sussex. WHYTE. I'm not familiar with that. Yeah, let's see. Somebody did a review here. It's a racing road bike. White Sussex. Let's just do images. Okay. White bikes. Let's go to their site. Road gravel, all terrain. Let's just do this one. Okay. The prices are not too bad. Reasonably priced. I don't know which. You say you have a Sussex. Let's see. When did they let you search on here? They should have a search. There we go. Let's see here. I wonder if I assume Sussex is the model. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I got all terrain. You see, they have e-bikes now. They're getting pretty popular. Let's look at the fast urban, all terrain, leisure. Let's see the adventure bikes. Whenever I come across any kind of bike site online, the first thing I try to do is look for the geometry. Let's see if they allow us to even look at. Some of them have it, some of them don't. A lot of times they'll let you see the geometry. Let's see, view all bikes. I like to see the geometry because that kind of lets me know that, okay, this bike can possibly fit me. Let me maximize this so you guys can see this better here. Make that full. All right. Let's see here. They got a good selection of bikes, all types, all terrain. I don't know if you know your seat geometry, Mark, but that's really important. So, like, if I were on this site looking for a bike, the first thing I would do is say, okay, geometry. And that's any site, whether it's called Nago or whatever. A lot of them will let you, basically, you can pull up the chart on each of them. And because all I'm looking for is this angle here, the seat angle. I don't really see the geometry here. Let's see, frame. They tell you a little bit about it here in the specs. because you need to make sure the bike can fit you. And my challenge is anything steeper than a 73 here cannot fit me very comfortably. I can't get my saddle back far enough, even with a rearward seat post, basically a setback seat post. That's why I had to get that extreme setback. Here we go. Here's the geometry here, so that's cool. So this one here, this is basically a seat angle. Let's see, B, seat tube angle, see? Okay, look at this bike. The extra small is 74.5. Medium is 74.5. So I couldn't even begin to fit this bike. I couldn't get my saddle back far enough. I don't know what other, I guess that's all they have. They have extra small, small, and medium. So that's kind of how you decide whether a bike is going to fit you or not. And look at what they've done. They've said the extra small is for 4'9" to 5'1". The medium is for 5'5" to 5'9". So they have nothing for somebody over 6 feet in this particular model per se. But that's kind of how you look at that. Let's see what, it's John Hill. John Hill says, it will weightlifting like leg squats help me put out more watts? Yes, it can, John, but you have to do that cautiously because if you do too much weightlifting, too much squat, you can build weight that you don't need on the bike. So you'll be carrying extra. So for example, riders that sprint, even in the tour or on the track. When I used to ride the track here in the velodrome, a lot of the guys, they had actually a place to lift weights at the track. Because a lot of the track cyclists lift weights because they don't need the endurance of a road racer. Their events are short and it's intense. So they need to put out that power, like you burn the match real quickly. So yes, but if you are an all-arounder, you only want to lift weights to help you maybe deal with like discrepancies. Like for example, Chris Froome, after he injured himself, some of his exercises are in the gym to help him build strength in one of his legs. He had an imbalance in the output of power. So you can use it for that, but you can just use it generally, but then do a lot of what I call endurance, do a lot of reps. Don't focus on just doing maximal stuff all the time, unless you're a track sprinter. And that's all your event. Your event is like, the kilo or something like that. So yeah. So yes, it does help, but don't overdo it because weightlifting can cause you to put on weights. I use weights myself when I do things like, let's go back to this default scene. Let's take that out. Okay. I do weights myself to basically try to strengthen areas that maybe I injure if I pull something. Like a while back, I pulled some muscles in my shoulder here. So I would use very light weight and high reps because the bike, you don't do much with your arms. In fact, you're supposed to relax your arms as you ride harder. So you can use weights for that to balance off. You can also use weights if you choose to strengthen your core, so that the strength in your stomach area can balance off any kind of aches you can have in your back muscles. Because if you have an imbalance in your core, not only do you not put out power properly, but you can get more of a backache because your muscles in your stomach are not strong enough to kind of counterbalance. So keep that in mind. So yeah, weights are things that you can use. There's nothing wrong with that. Definitely. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see here. Let me switch back to this. So what I was talking about before I got on the weight thing was be careful when you buy bikes. Don't just buy what they have at the bike shop. Make sure you know what seat angle will work for you. And that comes from either getting a prior bike fit or from finding out beforehand through a bike sizing. I hope that helps. He says a 2016 or 2017 model. Yeah. So that's my only thing. So shopping for a bike, we've talked about it before. I did a video where we talked about shopping for a bike with the specialized bike that Peter Sagan rides. And the biggest thing was that I talked about how, as pricey as the bike was, you had limited choices on what was available. And we talked about the angle. So there's not much you can do with the seat angle on the bicycle other than try to get a setback seat post. But the setback seat post only goes so far back. The one I have on my Colnago goes back 3.2 centimeters. You don't want them going much more than that. The weight just won't be well centered. So it's important that you know that the frame is set up for your body. There's nothing wrong with the bike that I showed on the white site. They're just not for very tall guys. The one I was looking at, and in their defense, I'm going to switch to it again. They called it a compact, 802 compact, V3. So that's probably why. So yeah, buying a bike starts with that. Does it have my seat angle? Can I get my saddle back far enough? Is the top tube long enough for my arms? Depending on what you need. So it helps to know. It's kind of like going to buy shoes. You need to know your size before you go and buy. Don't get stuck with what the bike shop has. Because you're not going to buy bikes all the time. So when you get a bike, get a frame with get a good foundation that you can change handlebars or do whatever you need to within reason. You don't want a bike that has too short of a top tube. Then you got to put a 15 centimeter stem on there or a 16 centimeter stem. That's just too long and it can affect your handling. I like a bike that will allow me to use a 12 or a 13 centimeter stem, even a 14 on the limit, So for the most part, I try to get a 59 centimeter top tube as far as the length, measured on a horizontal from the center of the seat tube to the center of the head tube. And that's how they do it on their geometry. They kind of tell you to put the line on there. I'm going to switch to this thing again so you can see what I'm talking about. You see the line right here that's called C. That's what I look at right there. All of the manufacturers that sell bikes online, they have them. And then some of them even have two ways to measure this, what they call J right here. This is your seat tube. They have two ways to measure. Some of them measure center to center right there, and some of them measure center to top. Some of them give you both. Center to center is the old school way of measuring a road bike. When you have a slope like this, any kind of slope, you never measure on the slope. You can see how they did the line. They're telling you they measure horizontally. That gives you the length of that tube. If you measured along the line, it would be wrong. So you measure this way. So a bike like this would have to be at least a 73 degree. I prefer 72 or slacker. And that would have to be minimum 59 for me to be able to fit that. That's kind of what you look at. I don't care how expensive the bike is. If it's not at least that, I can't get on it. And then this head tube, which they call, it looks like L. Is it an L or an I? It might be an I. This height, I prefer, it cannot be longer than 17 centimeters right here. Anything longer than that, I can't get low enough. If it's shorter, that's fine. I can put spacers out here. Then I can't slam it. But all my bikes are 17. That's why they're all slammed. And that's over the years of after getting my thing dialed in, my fit, and knowing what bike fitted me. And so a lot of the racers are already there. So when they go from team to team, they just hand their numbers to the new team. They give them, okay, this is the bike I'm riding. And so then they get them a bike to fit them. Because that's really important. The bike doesn't fit you, you can have all kinds of issues. Besides discomfort, you can have knee problems and other things. If you're riding a lot of hours, it needs to be comfortable. No way around it. Yeah, Alex mentioned S-Works. I think as he's talking about the bike. Yeah, I remember that. I remember the S-Works bike. And I've looked at the bikes like made by Trek, the Imonda. Dwayne says all 8 of his road bikes are Cannondale. Cannondale just fits my... Cannondale does have really good geometry. Let me see here. Display capture. Why is this not showing? All right. Oh, it's the Dell. Okay, let's go here. I want to see if I can find Cannondale. Cannondale has really good geometry. Cannondale, also Savello. Let me go to cannondale.com. All right, let's see where, if I can get in here without having to sign in. They always want you to sign in. They got their cookie policies. The sites are getting to be a pain to use. It's kind of annoying. Okay, let's do race. All right. And we're starting to look at a Super 6. Let's see here. And more of the bikes, as you can see, they're offering discs on all of them. You know, and once you commit the discs, you pretty much have to invest in wheels and all of that because you need wheels with the discs on it. So you can't use your older wheels. They've got a women's here. It looks like it has rim brake down there. This one right here. Let's see. I just really want to see the geometry, so I can pick any one of these. Let's just pick the. Let's see this one here. High mod Ultegra Di2. One thing about these the electronic shifters, I think I've mentioned it before. They're pretty pricey. So if you break any of the components after you buy them, the replacement prices will sticker shock you. So for example, I'm going to choose a 56 here. All right. So they have a thing where they say, what's my size and so forth. What I really want to do is to see where is the geometry. They don't make it easy to find here. Let's scroll down. Specs and sizing. Okay, let's go down here. Yeah, see, Alex says Bianchi and Canyon tend to have longer top two, which I need. Yeah, I have a 36-inch inseam in my arm. Let's see here. Let's go to display, cam link. All right, let's see here. I'll move this down. I'm gonna scroll up here. I want to find the. Yeah, here we go. Geometry. Move this down. Get me out of the way here. Let's go to. Move that out of the way so you guys can see. All right. Seat tube length. Let's see here. So I'm going to look at a 56. Okay, now this is a good one. I'm glad I'm doing this one. I hope you guys can see those numbers. The seat tube length in centimeters, it says here for a 56, it says it's a 53.0. So what they've done is, this is what I was talking about earlier. This measurement that they're calling A. You can see right here it says A, and you go across. It says 53. So the measurement they're calling A, they're actually measuring from the center of the bottom bracket, which is where you start. You can go to the top, and you can also, on the older bikes, you go basically where the intersection of the tubes, meaning the top tube and the seat tube. So it will be here. So the difference here, they're showing about almost 3 centimeters difference. Because what they're doing, they're measuring to the top. And that include what we call the lugs on standard frames per se. The lugs are the top here. And what they're saying is it's 56, the top tube horizontal length, which they call B in their chart up there, right here. B is actually, for the same size, is a 56. Well, that's 3 centimeters too short for me. I need a 59. So if I'm looking at this brand, the closest frame that would fit me is what they call a 60. which is fine because if you look at it, the actual measurement is a 57.7, meaning from center to center, so to speak, almost 58. I can ride a 58. I used to race on a 58. I don't have a problem with that. But then I come down to head tube angle. I don't care that much about that. I can adjust for that. And look at the seat tube angle, 73.1. Yeah, I might be able to get that to work, but if I had to call it, I would have to go to a 62 in this frame to get the same angle on my Cannondale, 72.7, because that 73.1 would mean I would have to shove my saddle further back than would keep the rail, the integrity of the rail. You'd be closer to the limit on the rail of your saddle. So yeah, that's what I look at. I'm like, okay, what decision making are they using to make these frames like that? Because these are your biggest frames, and you're not giving me shallow angles for my long femur. And most tall guys have long femurs. That's why you have problems with the fits like that. They don't make these off the shelf and hand them to their pros. A lot of the taller pro riders have custom frames because this wouldn't fit a lot of these guys that are over 6 feet tall. But they don't tell us that they act like they do. So I just wanted you to point that out. And that's kind of what we talked about when we talked about the S-Works. You know. Juice Boy say he's a dogma man. Okay, let's look at the dogma since we got a dogma man here. Let's go to Trek. I'm sure they have their angles there as well. Let me go up here. Let's get out of this thing. Let me see if I can get out of there. For somebody's hijacked my mouse. There we go. Let's get another tab. I want to keep that open and go to Trek. I think it's probably called Trek Bikes. I think they call it Trek Bikes, yeah. So let's go. You can tell I'm always out here looking at bikes. I always get people calling me to help them find bikes. So we're always looking, and we run into these same problems. A lot of times the people calling have never had a bike sizing done, so they don't really know what they need. And a lot of them, I'm not familiar with them. So then I tell them, well, you're going to have to do the bike sizing first. Because a lot of these help me choose things require that you know a lot about your measurements and so forth if you're going to use that. Somebody said this is good stuff. You're welcome, West. So let's talk about, it doesn't matter what kind of bike you buy, whether electric, e-bike, whatever. It's kind of like buying a shoe. It needs to fit you or you won't have that much fun. And since you don't buy bikes every day, you've got to put a little extra time and shop for your bike. So what I'm going to do is just look at road. It doesn't matter whether you buy on a mountain bike or a road bike. Same thing applies. If I were buying a mountain bike, I'd be looking for that seat angle because where I sit doesn't change based on the kind of bike. To do it properly, it's the same. You know, a time trial bike is slightly different because you're in a roll position, but still you need to make sure that you can get your saddle right. The saddles we use are shorter if you want to be UCI, I guess, legal per se. Let's look at the Imunda, or let's see, they have their fancier. I want to look at one of their more expensive bikes because I don't know if they carry the same. They've got a speed concept here. All right, let's go. Let's look at this. Let's say you're shopping 2021, and they've got here customized. Oh, that's a TT bike. So let's see. This is the Imunda SLR. I don't care about the Grupo. I'm really focusing on the frame set. So let's see. I really just want Imunda SL, Imunda SL6 disc. I want their fancier ones. Let's see. Disc brakes, road bikes, carbon road bikes. All right, that's that. I don't want that. Men. Let's just make the choices fewer. I want their priciest models, and then we can look at the angles that are on them. They're probably comparable. Okay, the Madone, $12,499. All right, let's just go in here. Regardless of the pricing, things the same. Mark said, I found the C angle on my white is 73 and I'm 6'2". I bought it online a few years back. 6'2". You might be able to work with that bike because 73 is my limit and I'm about your height, but it doesn't mean anything. It depends on how long your femur is versus your tibia. That determines how far back you sit and then the size of your foot. You know, all of that plays a factor in your fit. But it should be to where you can ride that. 73 is my limit. Anything steeper than that, I can't get the saddle back far enough. I don't care. Even though I have SMP with longer rails, it's not enough room. Let's go down to, let's see here. I'm trying to see where they got their geometry. They move them around all the time. Maybe it's in where we say customize, unless they're talking about adding. Customize probably means paint and all that stuff. Yeah, view current spec. All right, that's components. So they're talking about what the stuff you're going to put on there. I'm not that interested in that right now. Let's go here. I want a lot of them, put them down. They're inconsistent here. I wish they would just make there we go. I wish they would put like a bold print on every site about sizing and fit, like right up at the top. I don't like that they put it way down here because it's paramount. So here's what I look for. I come down here. See how they're giving you rider height? 4'11". In the 47, they're saying 4'11.8 to 5'2" and 5 foot 2 inches, 2.2, whatever. Don't go by that because every human being is different. Not every 6'2" person have the same dimensions. Like what Mark just said. He's 6'2". Well, I'm 6'2". Mark may have a longer torso than I do. So Mark may need a longer top tube than I do because everybody's different. That 6'2" is your total height. How you make that up varies. So you can't go by that. So if you're wanting to buy a bike from somebody in the know and they're not getting your specific measurements and they're just doing it by height, it's a gauge at best. That's not a good decision maker. Your total height. I never ask people how tall they are. I don't care. I want to know your inseam, first of all. That's important. And then I want to know your reach. That's what I need to put you on the bike. Because your height is measured to your head, not your arm span. Remember that. All right, so look at this bike here. I'm going to go to a 56. All the sizes are here. All the sizes are here. So, for example, a 56, 174, that's the rider height, basically 5'8" to 5'10". That's what they're saying. Now, I'm 6'2" and I can ride a 56. That's the smallest possible frame I can comfortably ride. If I go much below that, it starts feeling like a skateboard. I can also ride a 58. I have ridden 58s. So those are the two sizes I look at. You can see they're jumping in 2 centimeters anyway. So now let's look at the dimensions. So for example, it says here, seat tube. Seat tube here is in the 56. The seat tube is, oh, that's the height. Okay, so their 56 is 52.5 based on how they measure it. Oh, I like this. Let me make this bigger. Let me see if I can do this. Let's see. Here we go. Make this a little bigger. I want you to look at it. On this bike here, it's easier to see. I'm going to go ahead and try to make the frame bigger. Here we go. I'm going to bring this over a little bit. On this frame here, I like this diagram better. It explains better what I was talking about. The measurement of A, which they call seat tube right here, if you look on the frame, it goes from the center on this line to the top. Like you see, they literally have a clamp there. I don't know if you can see the mouse. It's kind of small. Okay, that's the top of the lug on the frame. Okay, so that's called the measurement of center to top. Center to center, which is the measurement we've always used from time immemorial, is the actual size of the frame. where this tube, the top tube, intersects the seat tube. That's your center to center. Their center to center on that 56 is in actuality a 52.5 centimeter frame. So in this Trek, if I were buying it, I would not buy the 56. That's too small for me. I'm going to go down in size now on the thing so you can see the rest on the just this. Go back. Okay, so in the Trek that we're looking at here, the Madone, I will be looking for a 58 centimeter because they're 58 centimeter center to top. They're what they call their frame size number. It's actually a 55.3 seat tube, which is closest to where I want to be ideally. So you see how they're splitting hairs. So how they measure it and how it actually comes out are two different things. All of that is not just Trek. All of them, you got to check for that. So for me, I would buy a 58 in a Trek, which equates to a 55.3, as opposed to, like, I could even ride their 60 because it's only 57.3. So in this kind of a manufacturer's choice, I could probably get a frame here because let me go down to seat tube angle right below that. Oh, yeah, I really like this now. You guys are going to get me in trouble. Seat tube angle B, a 72.8, which is close to what my Colnago is what Trek has in the 60. And their 60 is in effect center to center 57.3. So if I were to get a Madone, I would get the 60. The reason being, now the other thing I would look at is the head tube height, head tube length. They call it C. Let's see here, 19. So no, so now here we go. I said I would get the 60. It wouldn't work for me because the 19 head tube is too long. It wouldn't get me low enough. So I would get the 58, which is 17.1. There's 1 millimeter too high. I can live with that. 17.1. So you see what happens when you know. Now, what's important about all these numbers I'm throwing out? The bike I just configured here showing you, if I got a Trek Imunda 58, I could just slam my stem because the head tube is 17.1. A millimeter is about a hair. It's not going to be a big deal. That's what would determine whether I'm able to slam my stem. Not that it's a requirement. If they had a frame that was 16.5 head tube, I just put a 5 millimeter spacer on there to get me where I need to be. But when you know what dials you in, you can buy better. Or you can just say, I can't buy from these guys. That's what I'm getting at. I'm using this model as an example because the geometries are going to be very close. The manufacturers don't go too crazy just because this is an expensive one or inexpensive one. They have a tendency to stay consistent throughout the models. And I just wanted to use the Imunda, which is one of their pricier frames, as a gauge. But that's kind of what you want to look at. So if you don't know how high your head tube should be, how long, and you buy one that's too long, you can't get those bars low enough to be comfortable. So you will always be higher. Then your shoulders will be up like that. That's the thing. You guys remember, those of you who've been here a long time, Paul got an endurance bike, and we had to get a special stem to get it to work for him. And he rides it, it's a Velo. So it's important that you look at those dimensions we're talking about. You can't just buy a frame because it's on sale. I mean, you could, but it may not fit you very well. When I used to race, they used to make more frame sizes. Now they're doing fewer sizes. And this bike here, let me see, what is the top tube? See, even the Trek that I configured, the top tube is a little short, 57.4. Let's say 57.5. We're splitting hairs. I would need to get a stem 2.5 centimeters longer than what I normally ride. That would be close to like a 16. That's just kind of long. I mean, it would still work, but still, if you're spending that kind of money, the bike needs to fit you. There are custom bikes that don't cost what this bike costs. So for me, I would get a custom frame built to fit me, whether it's carbon, whatever. I mean, Calfee makes custom carbon frames. That's the point I'm making. And they don't cost that much. You can get a custom frame for $5,000, just the frame. and then put your own components on there. So don't think because it says it's custom or it's being built for you by a builder that it's pricey. Oh, a lot of the bikes off the shelf, especially when you talk about the dogmas and whatever, they're very pricey. And so if they're that pricey, they need to fit me like a glove. That's my issue. Juice Bus said he was just trying to help out. That's fine. I don't mind. I'm just saying that, oh, Paul is here. Hey, my brother. I'm just saying that if you're going to buy a frame, whether you're buying it used or whether you're buying it from someone who just put it, at least have a general idea. It's kind of like a shoe. I wear a size 11. So if someone's selling a size 10 shoe, I'm not in the market. That's what I'm getting at. You need to at least know what frame size will work for you. And then you could even take an angle finder. You can get them at Home Depot. They're pretty simple tools. And check the angle if the person doesn't know. Because a lot of times they may not know. But you need to have a general idea of whether you're going to be able to fit that frame comfortably without getting specially made stuff. You can get a custom stem made, but it will cost you, a few $100s. So why bother if you got to do all of that to get the bike to fit you? So it's better up front to get something in your range that you can play with. So I'd much rather get like my orange bike is 70-degree seat tube angle. So I put a straight seat post on there and put the saddle on there and it's dead center on the rails. Fits really well. Not that if I moved it back, it will be the end of the world. But if you move the saddle too far back towards the limit of where the rail on your saddle starts to curve up, it's not recommended. You're putting a lot of pressure on like an area that's not designed to take a lot of stress. And so over time, you can have challenges. So yeah, no issues. I mean, I like doing this kind of stuff because, even if you're buying a bike from Amazon or where, it doesn't matter where you get in the frame. You go to eBay. I look on eBay a lot for stuff, and I look on also Facebook Marketplace for people. And my challenge on eBay is that a lot of the guys that list their frames don't even give you the specs. So you end up sending a lot of questions to the seller. And I was like, why don't you just put it there? So you don't get all these messages and so forth. But you need to know if you're going to buy a bike, it needs to fit you. We're on a ride one time, and this is how people show their ignorance. Paul knows. Paulie Longa was on a ride. It was his bike. We stopped at a store, and he leaned his bike by the door. We're talking or something. One of the riders in the group, who I'm not going to name, said that, why don't you move your seat back? This was the bike that Paul has. I think it's a Giant Propel. He calls it Blade because it's the tubes are bladed, very aero. And the guy just out of the blue just said, why don't you move your seat back and make it more centered? Because we had to move Paul's saddle further back because the angle on that Giant is like 73. We didn't use up all of the rail, but think about it, all of you that are here. If you look at your saddle, like Dwayne's got 8 bikes, I'm sure his saddle is not in the same position on every bike, unless the angle's the same and he's got the same exact saddle. So anybody who has any kind of general knowledge would know that you don't arbitrarily place your saddle. So why would you tell somebody, why don't you move your seat forward so that the rail is more centered? You see what I mean? So he just showed us that. And this is a rider who, every time we're riding, you guys know him, but I don't want to call his name. Every time we're riding, he doesn't ride with us anymore. He doesn't show up anymore. But every time we're riding, when he goes hard, he arches his back and he gets in the drops, And he's one of the squirrely riders that used to get the drivers to honk at us. I'm giving the hints. For those of you who've been here a while, you'll know. But basically, he moves all over his bike every time he has to go hard, which is a signal that you're not sitting in the right spot. And he's the same guy who wants to tell Paul, move your saddle forward so it's more centered on the rail. As if we just put the saddle there arbitrarily. And so Paul looked at me, I looked at Paul, and we just kind of, I guess I shook my head, and I don't remember what answer we gave him, but I think he caught on that. That comment was like, meh. Just let it go because he didn't push the issue. But we looked at each other like, yeah, this guy's really clueless. You know what I'm talking about. That kind of situation. It's kind of like, don't give advice about stuff you don't know about. Just leave it alone. You know? And Twin said that's funny. Yeah, it is. It's like, that's what I mean when I've said it before. I said that if you don't know something and you try to act like you do, the people who know, they can tell just by your comments. So it's better to just ask about stuff you don't know. It's okay. Nobody knows everything. I don't know everything. I'm always asking questions. I'm the first guy to ask questions because I want to learn. You know, so it's okay instead of acting like you know and you end up showing your ignorance, you know. So it's like, you know, it's just kind of funny. It's funny because you must always pay attention to how you feel on the bike, because if you buy a new shoe, things will change. If you change your cleats, if you change your pedal system, you're trying something new, you know, like when I was testing the rally, I didn't have a problem with testing the rally because you guys know, I've said it for years, I wasn't interested in any pedal system that would cause me to change my preferred Shimano platform. Well, I didn't have to change anything. I took the same shoe I use every day and just clamped it in to new pedals. So nothing had changed. So nothing changed. My fit didn't feel different, nothing. And, you know, then they recommended that you use something called pedal dynamics. It's something that shows how you apply the power on your left versus your right leg and all of that. It's okay, but it's not something you'd want to look at while you're riding. I mean, who's got time for that? I don't care if my left leg is giving 48% of 100 watts and my right leg is giving 52. I don't care. All I want to know is I'm doing 100 watts. You know, I think that would be useful. It's something that comes on the Garmin head unit. It's a training page when you activate that pedal, I guess, and you turn on the page and it's there. And they have a graph with a circle that shows where you're applying the power, how much power you're applying and so forth. Yeah, that's cool on, you know, like a ride where you're taking it easy and you just want to play around with it. But I could care less how the power, unless I had injured a leg or something and I'm trying to make sure I'm getting the strength back in that leg and using it for that purpose. But other than just every day, I don't care which leg is putting out more power. You know, if I'm getting dropped, it doesn't matter which leg is stronger. I'm getting dropped. Yeah, that's what Paul says. He said, don't pretend as if you know everything. It makes you look ignorant. Yeah, you're correct. Nobody knows everything. It's not possible. I'll use this session for an example. The guy came on, what was that? I think his name was Mike. He said he had the Sussex bike. I didn't know anything about it. It's not possible to know everything. There are so many bikes out there. It's not possible. I mean, you just wouldn't have a life otherwise. And so what did I do? I opened up the browser behind me and looked for it. And we all looked and we found one of the compact models. And then I went on and that's how we got into talking about geometry. I mean, we were supposed to be talking about recovering, but that's fine. If you're recovering, it's a good day to shop for bikes or whatever you need. That, you know, use that time, put your feet up, rest up. But yeah, instead of me acting like I know the Sussex bikes, that wouldn't make any sense. You know, so when people ask for stuff, the same thing with the Trek. Even though I'm familiar with Trek, they're always changing stuff. All of them do. That's what they do. They're in the business. They're always making little changes. So when you're ready to buy their stuff, you've got to go and look for what's there now at this moment. And when you pull the trigger, and a lot of times, in fact, I have encountered that when I purchased cars in the past. They would tell you that it's subject to change, meaning that they didn't want you to get upset after your car was delivered and the new model comes out with halogen lights and yours didn't have, not halogen, let's say, what do you call it, xenon, and yours didn't have xenon. They'd let you know that all the specifications are subject to change. They're not guaranteeing that you will have the latest and greatest forever. And that's what it's all about. That's the fun thing. So you come to these sites, you look. And that's why I said, when you come to these sites, don't focus so much on, oh, this bike is cheap, this bike is expensive. Focus more on what's going to fit me. That's why we went through this exercise. And then several of you said good stuff and so forth. But that's how you shop for bikes. So imagine being armed with this information and go to your LBS, your local bike shop. Chances are, depending on which day, if you're fortunate, you might get an experienced person trying to sell you a bike in that shop. But if you do get an inexperienced person, you will be able to tell right away. Because they'll start talking about the color, all that other crap. Whereas you're coming in looking for the size, the angle of the seat, the length of the top tube. And if that person can't give you that, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be like, look, I want somebody else. I want somebody who can give me stuff. Once you find out, then you'll start talking about what color I want the bike to be in. Because it doesn't matter what color the bike is if it doesn't fit you. You won't be able to ride it, you know. And Mark told us, Mark's one of the guys that were talking about the bikes. He said he's on a 58. I think it was a Sussex. Yeah. So for me, the 60, whatever it is, 60 centimeter was the closest thing. But then when I looked at it, the top tube, the effective top tube, 58.6. So it's close, but not quite there. I need a 59. But if somebody gave me a 60 in a Trek, you think I'm going to say no? I'll find a stem that's 0.5 or point. I don't care if it's 1 millimeter too long, because usually the stems come in half sizes for us mere mortals, unless you want to order something special. But I would probably need like a 14 and a half for that to work, for that Trek. And those of you who are buying bikes that have integrated bars and stems, it's even more crucial that you get the measurements ahead of time. Can you imagine? You're not going to be able to swap that out very easily. It will be costly. So you got to know. And they're going to ask you because they know. They don't want to have to deal with switching that out. If you buy an integrated setup, the guys who get integrated stuff already know in that model what stem length and angle gets them where they want to be. They've already done like what we call in engineering a mock-up with standard stuff to replicate where they need to be. Then they order those integrated things. I'm sure you know what I'm getting at. So Dwayne says he had an old race teammate recently said to me I should be riding a 58 as he. I asked him, did he bump his head or something? It was a very stupid suggestion indeed. I mean, I don't know. I mean, so that riding a 58. Now, based on what I just showed you on here, that doesn't have a lot of meaning when you think about it. A 58 here in a Trek Emonda is in essence a 55.3. If we go to Cannondale, it might be something else. They're all messing around. They do the same thing with the clothing that we talk about. Castelli, you got to buy a 2XL. Rafa is a large. The other person is an XL. You know, it's the numbers that mean more. So now they're actually messing with the number, Dwayne. They're actually saying a 58 that's their center to top measurement in the picture behind me there. They're measuring to where that clamp is, the lugs. Back in the day, we only used center to center for your frame size. We did not use center to top. There was no point to it. The lug is there to reinforce the junction of the seat tube and the top tube. That's all its purpose is. Because these tubes are inserted into each other. That's what the lugs are for. The top tube is slipped in, the seat tube is slipped in, that lug is there to keep them together. That's all it is. It's an intersection. And so the actual height of a frame is measured from the center of the bottom bracket to the center of the joint of top tube and seat tube. Nobody cares about how high that lug is because every designer, manufacturer, whatever, back, especially with steel frames, they used to get really fancy. And the lugs were all different. They got really decorative on some of those things. And you paid more depending on how fancy you wanted your lugs to be. So that did not play a factor into the height of the bike. And now lately they're trying to measure that. Nobody cares about center to top. I always measure center to center. That's the height that I go with because that's what matters. That's how much frame is under you. And then with the sloping now, we still measure horizontally because back in the day, the tubes were horizontal. So we just measured the tube because the wall is horizontal. Now that it's not, we use a horizontal line, as you see in the diagrams I've shown, to measure. That's very important. It's those little things that really make the most difference in how your bike is going to fit you, not how much you pay for them. I'd much rather take a less expensive bike that fits me better than the most expensive bike that does not fit me. Because you will have more fun on a bike that fits you. So, yeah. The fit, that's what, yeah. Jess Boy says, individual fit is all that matters. I hope I got that right. I don't know if it's West Boy or Jess Boy, because it's a JW. I think it's Jess Boy. But, yeah, fit matters. And what matters is what works for you. You can't, because your friend riding 58, like you just said, means that you got to ride 58. Because your leg may be longer than his or shorter than his. He doesn't know that. Yeah, the fit is what you feel, man. The bike feels right. If you don't have a problem, don't mess with it. The bike, the key is that you have to decide, okay, there are several frame sizes that you can tolerate. Let's put it that way. Like I said, the smallest frame size I can go down to is a 56. I used to race on a 58. But I'm talking center to center. I'm not talking about these fancy measurements I'm showing you here where they're measuring to the top. They're measuring where the clamp is. We never measure there. We look at center to center. When you deal with a builder, they're going to either ask you for both or they will only ask you for center to center if you're getting a custom frame. Because that's the size of the frame. All that other stuff, like I explained, is to reinforce that joint. Because these tubes are not connected directly to each other. They're put into a lug. That's what you see in every junction is a lug. The bottom bracket shell is a separate thing than where the top tube at the bottom of the frame, where it slips down, it's going into a shell that has a hole on top and two holes on the side in the back for the stays. They are all fed in there, and then they're welded or cured or whatever, depending on the kind of bike. You need to understand that all the junctions on your bike has a shell. So where your bottom bracket goes in is a shell. Your wheel in the back, where the rear wheel goes, the actual axle, where the axle feeds into and where you clamp. The clamp itself can be separate, but it's all made separately. The builder does not make his own. They can source that. They can buy different kinds of the dropout. That's what they call them. They're all different kinds of dropouts. So the tubes and the dropouts are attached to each other. It's the same thing with the fork. When they make the fork has a different material, and what your wheel attaches to is different. Even in a carbon fork, the wheel attaches to some alloy down there in that area. It's being attached to the dropout itself. So the bicycle, the head tube is the same way. Those two tubes are the head tubes where it meets the down tubes. There's a shell there. That's how they connect everything. And it's solid when they're done because they don't want to affect the integrity of the tubes by messing with it. So it's fed into something and then welded or bonded, however they're doing it. I just wanted to explain that. So you need to realize that when you're actually measuring, you want to measure the tubes itself and where they intersect. So the seat tube, the tube is what you're interested in, not the shell it's fed into. Because that's the length of the shell. That doesn't mean anything. That's why even the bikes that have integrated seat posts, like some bikes now, which I don't know how great an idea that is. There are some bikes where the seat tube and the seat post are one, and then they go up. And then they have a place where you can slip the saddle on top. I don't know how that works long term. If you're going to sell the bike, if you cut it down to fit you and then you want to sell the bikes, you guys probably have heard of it. I don't like that design. And that was one of the problems my brother ran into with the Giant. He was trying to get a a seat post with more of a setback than what came with the bike. And Giant did not offer one. But because the shape is proprietary, it's all angled, you know, you can't put a round seat tube in there. So we couldn't buy one that had a rearward, setback. And so that's why we had to put his seat really far back like we did. And those are the kind of things when you're trying to get into the fancier bikes, you've got to really do your research before you put your dollars down. And so if you're using a bike shop, you want somebody who's knowledgeable that will find out all this stuff ahead of time before you spend your money. Because it's a big commitment. You don't buy frames weekly, So Dwayne said he's got 8 frames, I think. So that's N plus 1. That means 8 plus 1 plus the next one he gets. That's how much he owns. N plus 1. I don't think I have storage for 8 frames. But yeah, that's cool, man. That's good. I like having. I think a serious cyclist should have at least 2 frames if you can. And think about it. Some of the components. Like I was looking online, and a rear. I think it was a rear derailleur, a Shimano Ultegra Di2 or something. It's like $600 and something. I don't know. Let me just do the search here. I was like, wow, okay. So if you break a derailleur, let's see, Ultegra. I don't know what I was looking for, but it showed up. I'm not even gonna do the group set. I'm just gonna, here we go. Okay, what have been the 250 used, and let's see, backcountry. Oh, that's not too bad. Oh, so almost $300. Okay, now the the parts for these electronic parts, they're very high. So when they break, it's a ka-ching to replace them. But, if you take care of them, you shouldn't have any problems. If you're not crashing or anything, most of the times, they're pretty tough. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, Di2, they're nice to have, but it's not going to make you any faster. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. If you want to try them and you can afford it, for all means. But don't think it's going to put you at the front of the group if you're in the middle. It doesn't get there any faster than the regular shifters that are adjusted properly. Oh man. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up. Get ready for the weekend. I had a full rest week. I didn't ride the bike, just wanted to rest up. I slept a lot, which is what a rest week should be. I got caught up on my sleep because sometimes I cheat sleep. I get up kind of early, and then when I go for a spin, I come back. You get into your day, and you don't get a chance to really rest. So I want to thank all of you that gave me the feedback on the reverb. I made a note of that, so I will let my techie that I'm working with know. I work with the people at YouTube, because once you become a YouTube partner, they try to help you when you do these things. So let's see. I crazily don't get rid of my Cannondales. I would have 9, but one of my riding when cracked his light speed, and I sold him one of my prized possessions. Yeah, Cannondales. I think they've got good geometry. They got really good geometry. So, yeah, from what I've seen. So don't worry so much about what they call the size of the bike. As I wrap up this, I kind of want you guys to just know that don't be too concerned about what they call the size of the bike. It's just like somebody saying a jersey is extra large. I don't care what size they call it. If it fits me, then that's all that matters. It's the same thing with the bike. They can call it a 60. I've just shown you. That doesn't mean a whole lot because they're not measuring it the way it's supposed to be measured. Like the Imunda, they called it a 60, and it was like, not really a 60. So a 60 somewhere else doesn't mean that it's a 60. So don't worry too much about the number they put on it. What matters is that you get something that fits you. That's what matters. You get to know what you need measured consistently. That's why you want to measure center to center, and you measure the top tube. I like the way they measure the top tube. At least they realize that you have to measure it horizontally. So even though they're giving you the sloping tubes, they measure it horizontally. Thanks, Dwayne. Appreciate it, man. Dwayne is supporting our channel as best as he can. We appreciate that. It's the thought that counts. He says a new look is awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to do more hands-on, more interactive stuff instead of just making a video about arrest week. And as one of the guys, I think he's in France, he said that we get to cover more in this format. I kind of like this format. It's more interactive, and we get to answer more questions and deal with more issues, and instead of just a video, then people put comments and so forth. So we still get comments on these, but I think I'm treating these like videos because that's what they are, and that's what they will be as we do them, so that even though it's live, those of you who are here interact. There are other people who come and watch after the fact. They can still get a benefit because they get to actually see our chat as well. That's kind of cool. So I definitely want to thank all of you, and hopefully we'll be able to keep this up. It's the support of guys like you, Robert Tangler, John Hill, all of you that have enabled us to get to this point. So I'm still streamlining this stuff. All the comments early on when we started was very important, because what the guy told me at YouTube ended up being wrong, and you guys proved it, because we almost had the reverb was because we had two different outputs of the stream coming from YouTube. And I had queried him about it, but then he was like, "Oh no, that's what you should do." And so, because it's kind of hard to test it yourself, it's easier, but I kind of suspected. So when you guys started talking, I knew exactly what to go and turn off. So that's kind of cool, Just but said, "How can I donate? Is that in rupees or dollars?" Just do a super chat for what you can afford. We appreciate anything you send. We're here to help. When I started cycling, we didn't have the luxury of a place to get information. And when you don't know, people tend to steer you wrong sometimes that you ride with. So we wanted to make sure that people have a place to where they can get truthful information about everything cycling, So we appreciate that. But we'll let you guys go. Get ready for the weekend and get your Ks in. We'll see if we're able to get some clips this weekend, but I don't know how the ride will go. So take care.